Okay, handing it over to you, Mr. Reel.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Dennis Reel. I am the instructor at the 5A High School Public, or check that, Criminal Justice Academy over in Hudson. Um, I've got a background, came out of retirement to do this, so I have a background in public service. So rather than just speak about public safety, I thought I'd expand this conversation and give you a little bit of exposure to public service and what jobs are available. So, what is public service? We'll get into that in a minute. Just a little bit about my background. Again, I'm retired, spent 20 years in the police force, retired as a detective commander just south of Boston area in New England. And then at the same time, spent 4 years active duty in the U.S. Air Force after college before I was a police officer. Continued my service there in the reserve component, the Rhode Island Air National Guard, for another 30 some odd years. The last 12 of which were again back on active duty during our trips into Iraq and Afghanistan, where we were fighting the war on terror. So this is my third career teaching. And the one thing I could say about all three careers is I've loved them all immensely. This might be my favorite, but they're all public service jobs, and that's what we're going to look at today. Okay, so what is public service? Easy way to answer this. If you look at your paycheck at the end of the week, and somewhere on the top there it says Pasco County, State of Florida, U.S. federal government, Department of IRS, Department of Justice, you are working in a public service job. It's going to be monies that come from taxpayers that fund either a local city, town, or county, or they fund a state government, or they fund the federal government through your federal income tax. Okay, so what's unique about that? Why should I consider public service as a possible career option when I graduate high school, college? Well, let's see if we can get into that. All right, so if you're the kind of person generally, and again, the vast majority of public service jobs are public facing, meaning you're going to interact with the public. Think about teaching. Literally spend my 7.5 hours a day at work, plus all the other hours I'm doing something, interacting with the public in the form of students and parents. The years I spent as a police officer was almost strictly serving the public on a day-to-day basis and facing different people. So it's a public-facing job where you're generally in a position to deal with the public almost every day. If you enjoy helping people, that's a tip off that you might like public service. If you're service focused, if you feel that somebody in this country needs to serve others through the government, it's probably a job for you. If you find yourself, when you're dealing with your friends, always the one that's helping, this is probably a job for you. And again, just in general, um, Dennis Reel's 2 cents. You, if you got to work in life, you might as well work at a job that doesn't feel like it's a job, right? Something you can get up and go to every day and still keep on smiling. And that's the kind of job I found public service to be. And I would posit most people would like that. All right. The other real attraction to public service or public sector jobs is that there are many of them. There are currently roughly 22 million government jobs in America. Again, either working for your county, city, or town, your state, or the federal government, and that's a lot of jobs. Um, at least in two of those segments, local and state, those jobs are growing. We have, America continues to increase in terms of its census, and it needs public employees to serve those citizens. Job security. When I wrote this 3 weeks ago, that was a truism. But right now, there's a little bit of a realignment happening on the federal government side, and they're trying to shrink government a little bit. To be candid, that could happen anytime. I've never seen it happen in my 64 some odd years on the earth. So, I would still say that that's highly unlikely in most cases. It is recession proof. Again, we go into a recession or we go into any sort of a economic downturn, unlike private sector jobs that where companies work for a profit, and if they don't get their profit, they don't last. The government doesn't operate that way. Government services are still needed around the clock, 365 days a year, regardless of what the economy look like. So job security in the government sector is very good. Job satisfaction, I think we've spoken to that. Again, if you enjoy being public facing and helping people, um, I, which I find incredibly satisfying, this is the job for you somewhere in these job clusters. Fairly predictable hours. A lot of public sector jobs are unionized. I'm not sure if you quite know what that is. Oh, by the way, if you have questions at any point, stop me. I'll be happy to answer those. Um, but as a result of the tendency of public sector jobs to have union representation and also to have um, their job structured by law, they're pretty predictable in terms of how many hours you can work, how many you can't work, et cetera. Conditions of work, and other factors that um, surround your work environment. Reasonable pay structures. You're not going to be a millionaire overnight if you're smart about how you manage. And I'll go into the next two bullets here. I'll tie them all together. Um, your pension. Most pensions aren't as defined is the term we use as they were when I retired from law enforcement in 2004, but they're still pretty good. So if you're smart about um, the way you manage your pension monies and then supplement those with some other things you can do, IRAs, Roth IRAs, etc. By the time you retire, you can't be a millionaire. Are you going to make $1 million a year? While you're working? No, but you'll be able to raise a family, live a good life. Okay. Um, let's pop on over. All right. So when we talk about the job market out there in America, we like to say they're in clusters, right? So the public service cluster, let's take a little bit of a close look at that. We've already spoken about this. These jobs are found at the three levels of government. They're funded by taxpayer monies. So municipal, county, and city and town, state, and then federal. Okay. Now, within those three levels of government, they all have a judicial, legislative, and executive branch. And you all know that because you're all paying attention in civics, I know. Um, the jobs are found within those three branches, right? So the majority fall under the executive branches. The executive of any government is the person who's responsible for making sure government services are delivered. So they naturally fall there. Legislative, the people who make our laws, some fall within there, but not as many as you would find the executive level, and then even less than that would be jobs we find in the judicial level. But they do exist. So a lot of good job opportunities working for your state senate as, a policy professional or an accountant who can manage state budgets. So a lot of opportunities there on the legislative side. Same thing on the judicial side. You could be a court clerk, you could be court security. A lot of opportunities there. All right, and then the other thing, and we'll spend a lot of time here because it's not very common, but we have what are called quasi-governmental jobs. And a quasi-governmental job is a job where the government says, hey, we need to have this service, but we don't completely want to own it because it's pretty expensive, right? So think about things like colleges and universities, which are owned by the government, but they take monies from a lot of different places besides just your federal tax dollars, right? Think about how expensive it is, especially in a state as large as Florida, to maintain and build and care bridges and turnpikes. Bridges are very, very expensive. We've got one being built and almost finished right now between Tampa going over the bay into St. Pete and Clearwater. Put a price tag on that, and not one single city or town could handle it. So they make it quasi-governmental. They raise monies from things called bonds, something you'll learn about in your economics class. Clean water authorities, they're the same sort of thing, right? A lot of job opportunities there. There is a governmental connection to it, but not entirely. And then lastly, but leastly, is elective office holders, right? And so if you want to run for sheriff in your county, if you want to run for a county commission, you're a public service employee. You are answering directly to taxpayers in a way most public service employees don't, because you're elected, right? You serve at their pleasure. If they don't like what you're doing, you get voted out. But that is a public service job. Okay, so let's transition. So the types of public service jobs. Let's look at the specific jobs. Um, and this is a pretty good capture of what's available out there. So public safety. The number one job of any government is to provide a safe environment for their citizens. If it's a nation, it's to provide a safe environment and a safe international environment as well, right? So we've got on the public safety side, and again, this is where I come from, law enforcement. There are roughly almost 1 million law enforcement agents in America right now, and they serve in small towns as police officers. They serve in large cities as police officers. They serve in counties as deputies. They serve for government agencies as agents. Think about things like the FBI, Department of Drug Administration. So there's a wide range of law enforcement jobs with a wide scope of authorities, right? What we call jurisdictions. So if you want to become a police officer and you become a Tampa Bay or a Tampa City police officer, your jurisdiction is Tampa City. However, if you decide to work for the state as a highway patrolman, trooper, your jurisdiction is the whole state. You can make arrests from Miami to Pensacola. So all things to consider there, right? All right, what happens when somebody gets arrested? Well, generally, if they get found guilty or they plead guilty, they get incarcerated. So there are many job opportunities that are wrapped around jails and prisons. So jail is a local area where we hold people who are waiting a trial or who are serving some sort of a violation, like a violation of probation, or are serving a sentence of less than 1 year for minor charges like third offense, drunk driving, things of that nature. A prison is where you're going to go if you've got a longer sentence. If you get a sentence of 5 to 10 to lifetime, you're going to go to a prison. So that's a different kind of clientele, but it's still correctional officers work, right? Very, very good work. Probation and parole is also part of corrections, but those are for released offenders. So if you get sentenced to 10 years in Florida, after 80% of your sentence, you're eligible to be paroled. That doesn't mean you're free to go. It means you've got to respond to a parole officer and his or her conditions of release for the following 2 years. So great career field. You're out in the street all the time, good stuff. Probation is a part of a sentence that a judge would give you. So say he sentences you to 5 years, you may say 4 to serve, 1 on probation. Same thing as parole, right? Court security, there's a lot of them. Every court and a lot of, not just courts, by the way, a lot of state and government buildings require security. Some use private security companies, but most like to use state employees who are trained as security experts and have powers of arrest. Okay. And then the last field, very, very interesting. I ran up against it when I went back onto active duty as a full-time National Guardsman in Rhode Island. Part of my portfolio was the Emergency Management Agency. So emergency management, especially down here in the Southeast, is a huge career opportunity, right? Because you have to have people who specialize in planning how to respond and how to coordinate responses to major man-made or natural disasters. And then when those disasters hit, who can actually manage them, right? Hence the term emergency management. A great career field, very, very important career field, and it's growing immensely because since a hurricane back in New Orleans called, it'll come to me, whatever it was, but it was 2005. We had a huge hurricane.
Katrina.
Thank you, Katrina. That's right. What they found was that one of the best ways to manage emergencies was to provide emergency contacts in large businesses, right? So almost every large business now has somebody who specializes just in emergency management, handles questions like, where are we going to go if we lose our power? What's going to happen if we get flooded? Do we have a secondary location where we can set up business? So that's a great career field. All right, defense and military affairs. Most people don't know when they consider a military career. They just think it's active duty. Active duty is you go to basic training and you go wherever the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines want to send you for the next 4 years. You do have other options. The military, very smartly, maintains a very robust reserve branch so that if we don't need them, we're not paying them full time. But if we do need them, like we did for the 15 years or so following 9/11, what we call the global war on terror, many Reserve and National Guard units were activated. That's why I left law enforcement, because the unit I was commanding in the reserves got activated and sent to Iraq. So great opportunity, all great opportunities, right? Active duty, can't say enough good stuff about that. But if you decide to go Guard and Reserve, specifically Guard, the Guard not only serves their country in the branch that they're associated with, but also they serve their state. So for state natural disasters, all the governors, their first call is going to be the National Guard to see how many people they've got they can muster up. And National Guard responds to those natural disasters. The other great benefits for military, either active or Guard Reserve, is college tuition. You're going to get your college paid for. And then there are literally 100,000 or so opportunities to work for the Department of Defense as a civilian employee, right? So there's a lot of jobs there where I don't need a gun carrying, uniform wearing person. Human resources, planning, things of that nature. You can be a civilian working for the Department of Defense. Public health, kind of topical recently, as we see an outbreak of the measles in Texas. And literally in between presentations here, I was watching a little news piece on that. So public health people manage major medical issues in America. And when they're not doing that, they're doing the research and writing the policies and the administrations. They have emergency services, good stuff. Human services. All right. People have mental health issues. People are born with disabilities. people get old and need long-term care. A lot of those services are so expensive that only the government can provide them for most people, so the government does, usually through a program called Medicare or Medicaid. Um, but that requires an awful lot of people who have specialties in those areas to, again, assist the public, right? Public service jobs. And lastly, social services, right? So people have traumatic incidents and issues on a daily basis in America. Could be related to your child, your children, or your family issues. So we have every state's got departments of children, family, and youth. Elderly people have specific needs. Every state's got a Department of Elderly Affairs, uh, deaf and blind services. There's a host of issues out there. Again, in terms of if what drives you is being of use and being of assistance to people and helping people, that's another great career field that pays well, by the way. All right. These are all executive branch jobs, right? So I'm going to kind of run through these a little quicker. We're about 7 minutes out. All right, environmental management. So a couple of areas there. You can be a police officer who enforces environmental management law. That's these bubbas up here. Um, so that's the enforcement side or the policy side. You can be a person that writes those laws. Education, obviously, I'm new to this career field. It's only my 5th year. Again, might be the best job I've ever had in my life, and I've loved my other 2 jobs. But I can't say enough good things in terms of self-satisfaction about being an educator. So, no better way to give back to your community. Here's something I don't want to do. I don't ever want to have to be the taxation and revenue collection guy. Nobody really likes him, but that's a huge field in the public service area. We have to fund everything. Labor training, where we provide people the training they need to work jobs. That's a big issue here in Pasco County. We're growing at a breakneck speed, and the county spends a lot of time trying to attract new employees in here, but the employers won't come and build in Pasco County unless we have a workforce that has those skills. This is where they get those skills, or those skills get arranged for them. So good job. Transportation, of course, right? Bus driver, uh, tow trucks, whatever. A lot of transportation jobs in the government side, business regulation, and then some other support services, right? So human resources, the people that pay us, the financial people, communications, et cetera. So as you can see, there is no shortage of government jobs out there, and there's a job waiting for everybody in some part of the government. Okay, legislative branch. I told you it's not a lot there, but some of the cool stuff they have is customer support. So that's every congressman, every senator has got a um, customer support area, constituent affairs, they typically call it, but that's pure helpline. So if somebody calls, they have a problem with their VA pension, whatever, you call them, right? Legislative aids, a little more specific. You'd have to be a political science major type of person. If you're a real policy wonk, all the legislators, they don't write their own policies and bills. An expert does that. All right. And then lastly, let's look at on the judicial side. Again, I can't think one of the best things we do at 5A in the criminal justice world is we have a mock trial team. I can't think of a better job. So in the justice system, right, we have judges. They're generally lawyers who have been on the bench, litigated a lot, and then get appointed, right? And they're typically very experienced, very smart, but they don't do all the work. The work in a court gets done by court administrators, court security, right? They're all day long. And then all of the other support services you think you're going to need to run a court. And then a bunch of other services you're going to need in court to help people who are, found guilty. So they may go to diversion, they may go to counseling. All of those services are there. All right, let's look at the hot jobs. So the hot jobs in public safety right now, The top one is exploding. I checked it again today. These slides are about 3 years old now. It's still one of the top jobs. The more dependent we are on the internet and the more we operate in a linked environment, the more critical security is for those environments. So you hear about it at least once a week. You hear about data breaches from government data systems and people's PII, personally identifiable information, name, social security number, birth dates gets released. Uh, these jobs, literally, if you go to Pasco Hernando State College right now, don't even get the degree, get the certificate, you're going to walk into a $70,000 a year job. Get the degree, work in the field for 3 or 4 years, and you're at 100,000. It is an incredibly lucrative career path right now. Law enforcement corrections for the last 5 years, to be candid, since a couple of highly publicized bad interactions between police and the public, it's going down, right? So it's hard to find law enforcement officers now or corrections officers. So those are real targets of opportunity right now. And the starting pay is crazy. I was home 2 months ago. My former agency, I stopped in. They're starting people at they're starting them at $85,000 a year. That's crazy, right? But there it is. We're not too far behind here in the Southeast right now either. So target of opportunity there. Social services, we always need social workers, clinicians with specialties for specific cohorts of people, elderly, children, families, etc. Public health, always a big deal, especially since COVID. A lot of the post-mortem uh, evaluations after COVID found that we didn't have enough public health people in the system. So they're still hiring from that. Again, transportation, always hot, right? The one I'll point to right now that's really at the forefront is the FAA. So you may know we've got a shortage of air traffic controllers out there. And they're talking about bonuses right now to bring in at $160,000 to control aircraft. Okay. Hope that was helpful for you. If there are any questions, you can do one of two things: fire off right now, or go ahead and put it in the comments. Ms. Batchel will get those to me, and I'll be happy to get back to you. And if anybody wants to call me directly, you can find me. You can find my email in the 5A